All right, today we are going to go through the Algebra 2 V14 course training for Segment 1. We will be splitting this into Segment 1 and Segment 2, so hopefully you'll have the time to watch both of them. Our agenda for today is Segment 1, Content Lesson Summaries, and the Assessment Design. As you can see, the look and feel for the Algebra 2 course is very similar to the previous version. The course navigation has a nice little pop-up window where you can go through modules 1 through 10. The students will see this whenever they click on lessons, and they can navigate to whichever module they need to go to. So for example, if they close out the course and they need to get back into module 4, they can click module 4. They don't have to go through all the previous modules. As far as navigation in the course, there are two main tabs that they need to know about. The top tab up here, you have your page numbers, your bookmark, your home button, and then your forward and backwards on your pages. And then there's a little tab on the left-hand side where the students can get to the different modules and lessons. They can get to their notes, and they can also print certain pages. So the first little tab up here, one of 6, tells you the page number that you're on. When the students click on that, it gives them this little navigation window down here. So it shows us pages 1 through 6. It also shows them how far along in the module that they are. And in this case, since they're in 405, it shows a percentage of 53. The next little button is the bookmark. When the students click on bookmark, you notice that over here on their tab, a little star will show up. So that shows that they have actually bookmarked a page and they can go back to it. The home button gets the students back to the original navigation menu. So when they click home, it takes them back to the first page that they saw when they logged in under lessons. And then of course the last two buttons are the forward and backward for the pages. So the students can go back a page, forward a page. There's a tab over on the left-hand side with 3 icons that the students need to know. One is a map, and when the students click on the map, it brings up all of the modules 1 through 10, but then when they click on a specific module, it brings out the lessons. So they can skip to a specific lesson, and that is great for whenever they leave the course and they need to get back into it. So say they left the course yesterday and need to get back into lesson 205, they can click on the little map, click on module 2, and then click on 205, and it'll get them right to that lesson. The next one is the notes icon. And when the students click on that, it shows them how to do Cornell notes, how to take proper notes in math. And then the last one is, of course, the print page. They don't actually have to print the page, but they can save as a PDF if they need to. Say there's a page with a bunch of definitions or something like that, and they would rather save it instead of writing their notes, they can do that. Now we're going to get into the modules. And Module 1 is just an overview of the major Algebra 1 concepts that students had whenever they took Algebra 1, whether it was a previous, last year or it was 2 years ago. It's just a great refresher for them. So they remember what they need and the tools they need for this course specifically. 1.00 has a little bit more information in it just because they are starting a segment. So this one has an introduction to the course, and it also talks a little bit about the pretest for 1.00. And the first slideshow here, the students will go through and it shows them how to navigate through the course, just like I just showed you how to navigate through the course. This slideshow shows the students how to navigate through the course, what the icons mean, the click to reveals, those type of things, and how they get through the course. The next page in the introduction also talks a little bit about the tools that the students will have at their disposal, the pacing guide, collaboration opportunities, what that means, what a module checklist is, which the students are encouraged to use so they know that they've covered all the material in the module, what a discussion-based assessment is with their teacher, and also how to get to the course information and what is offered there. The Module 1 checklist, every module starts off with a checklist. So in this one, you have 100 to 109, and it includes everything that the students are responsible for, the lessons and the assessment. So in this one, the students have 5 lessons where they're going to learn information. The key concepts for Module 1, there are many, and like I said, it is a review of Algebra 1. So it goes as small as the order of operations, solving 1 and 2-step equations, all the way to the other end of the spectrum of finding key features of graphs, comparing functions, variety of different functions, graphing linear equations, just the basics that students need to remember from Algebra 1. For 101, the algebra review, you'll notice that each lesson starts with a hook. So it kind of hooks the student in, gets them interested in the lesson. Sometimes you'll see it as a slideshow, like this one is for 101. Sometimes you'll see it as a video. Sometimes you'll see it as a little scenario they may need to read through. And it gets them hooked on the lesson so that they know what they're headed towards. It could be a problem at the beginning, and then by the end of the lesson, they will have the tools to answer that problem. For 101, the students learn order of operations, solving 1 and 2 step equations, variables on both sides, and literal equations. Throughout the course, there are links that students do need to click on to get more information. One of those is the Learn More link. If the students click on the Learn More link, it gives them more examples of a specific type of question. In the lesson, there may only be 1 or 2. If they click Learn More, there may be 3 extra examples that can help them just a little bit more just to get those clarifications that they need. The review links are links to activate that background knowledge. So especially for order of operations, it may be something that they've already learned. They probably learned it in middle school. So they need to click on that link to be like, oh, okay, yes, I remember how to do this now. There are a few more examples in there. It reminds them what the order of operations are, those types of things. So review links are great for the kids. Now, 101 does have an assessment, and it is a multiple choice. It's auto-graded. There are 9 multiple choice questions, and it is worth 10 points. For 102, we've got the Learn up here at the top, and this one is just a quick little scenario. You'll notice the essential questions. The first page on every lesson has the essential questions. So the students are responsible for knowing the answers to those questions, because you could throw them out as an instructor as a DBA question. It could be something that the students need to know on an essay question on an exam, or just to get that deeper knowledge. Those essential questions are always there, and the students do need to answer them, not specifically in an assignment necessarily. They don't have to turn it into you, but those essential questions are there for them to kind of guide their thinking throughout the lesson so they know what their goal is. By the time they get to the end, they should be able to answer these questions. So for 102, we cover equations versus functions, vertical line test, function notation, inverses of functions, composition of functions. And then throughout the lessons, there are different interactives. Like this one here, the students will choose, what their answer is if they think this is a function or a non-function. If it's the wrong answer, it'll tell them, you have the wrong answer, try again. And then they can hit submit, and it goes through like a slideshow of different problems, so the students can practice if they know what a function is or if they don't know what it is. On 102, there are 7 multiple choice questions. It is auto-graded, and it is worth 10 points. 1.04, the students learn graphing linear equations and inequalities. Again, this is something they should have learned in Algebra 1, but we are reviewing in this first module. We have the hook here for the first page. And then throughout the lesson, there may be, some things that the students need to know that are extremely important, and they may be in a table style, like it is down here at the bottom of the screen. So there could be a table where we talk to them about, the vertical lines, horizontal lines, what the equations look like, the standard form of a line. Things that are important could possibly be in table form, which is easier for their kids to take notes that way. And what they're learning in 104 are graphing linear equations, the average rate of change, evaluating parameters, and graphing inequalities. The assessment for 104 is 7 multiple choice questions, which is auto-graded, and it is worth 10 points. 1.05, writing the equation of a line. And for this hook, the students have a video that they will watch. And for this lesson, they are learning different forms of linear equations, writing the equation of a line given 2 points, and writing the equation of a line given its graph. Throughout the lesson, when the students are shown specific examples, it could show them in this form where it has step 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are different tabs that the students click on. When they click on a tab, it shows them the work here on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, it tells them what they're doing in that step. And for this assessment, they have 5 multiple choice questions, and it is worth 10 points. 1.06, we are comparing functions. The hook for this lesson is about a map here, you can see. And in this lesson, the students are learning about key features of graphs, creating graphs from verbal descriptions, varieties of functions, and comparing functions. As far as varieties of functions, it's basically the different forms in which they will see the function. They may see it algebraically, they may see it graphically, in a table, or maybe even a verbal expression. For this assessment, students have 5 multiple choice questions, which is worth 10 points. The assessment summary for Module 1 is as follows. 101 is auto-graded. 102 is auto-graded. 103 is partially graded. This is a quiz, and the students will review what they learned in 101 and 102. Partially auto-graded, meaning that the teacher grades an essay question at the end. 104, 105, and 106 are also auto-graded. Okay, on to Module 2. This module introduces students to rational exponents, complex numbers, and polynomial operations. The module checklist is as follows, 2.00 all the way through 211. They are responsible for new information in 201, 202, 203, 205, 206, 207, and 208. The key concepts in this module go from rational exponents to radical expressions. They learn about terms of an expression, multiplying polynomials, adding and subtracting polynomials, powers of I, imaginary numbers. For 201, the students start off with rational exponents. And the hook for this one, they start with comparing things, like big to large, easy to simple. So it's like a thesaurus type thing. So the students realize what they're getting ready to do is similar to things they have already learned before. So for this lesson, they have rational exponents to radical expressions to rational exponents. So they're going from fraction form to the radical form and back. And there is a different type of interactive in this lesson where it's kind of drag and drop. So the students will drag specific things from the bottom of the interactive up to the correct box, and it fills it in for them. This assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. For 202, the students start learning about the properties of rational exponents. In this lesson, they learn multiplying, dividing rational exponents, raising a power to a power, and negative rational exponents. Now in this one, it is not a multiple choice assessment. The students have to do a project. They can do it collaboratively if they prefer, which would be with another student, and it is fully teacher graded. 203, they learn about solving these radical equations. Oftentimes through the lessons, they will see a nice, beautiful pink box that gives them some important information that they shouldn't miss. And in this one specifically, it is a link on how to deal with extraneous solutions. Sometimes there isn't a link. Sometimes it's just an important box that they need to know the information inside the box. In this lesson, the students learn defining radical equations, solving radical equations, and solving radical equations with variables outside the radical. So it teaches them how to isolate it in different situations. This is an auto-graded assessment, 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 2.05, they start getting into complex numbers, which are their imaginary numbers, powers of I, and their complex numbers. The examples in this lesson are sometimes tabbed, so the students will need to click on those tabs to get to the examples themselves and the explanations of those examples. The assessment for this lesson is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 2.06, operations with complex numbers. They learn how to multiply and divide complex numbers. We go back to factoring whenever the students get into complex numbers and teach them how to get the prime factors of specific numbers. So this example down here at the bottom shows them how to split 60 up, 30, 10 down to that prime factorization and how to get those perfect squares out. This assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 2.07, reviewing polynomials. In this lesson, we learn about types of expressions, the terms of an expression, polynomial arrangement, and the degree of a polynomial. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 2.08 is polynomial operations. This is when they learn to add, subtract, and multiply polynomials. They also review that distributive property, They've learned it before, but this is in a little more complex situation. And then also the function composition of polynomials. This is a 10-question multiple choice, auto grade, worth 10 points. The assessment summary for this lesson, you have 201, 203 through 208 are all auto graded. And then 202, as mentioned before, is teacher graded, and they can collaborate on that one with another student. Module 3, about factoring and quadratics. This is my favorite module. This module introduces students to different methods for factoring polynomials and the connection to solutions of quadratic equations. The module checklist, of course, always starts with a pretest, ends with our module exam, goes from 3.00 to 311. The students have 7 lessons where they learn new material: 301, 302, 303, 304, 306, 307, and 308. The key concepts in this module goes from greatest common factors, which they have learned before, but now it'll be in context of factoring. They learn about the general form, completing the square, deriving quadratic equations, sum and difference of cubes, all the different types of factoring, all the different formulas for factoring. 301 starts with greatest common factors and special products. In this lesson, they cover greatest common factors, difference of squares with binomials, and perfect square trinomials. There are interactives throughout the lesson. This one specifically is a drag and drop. So the students drag and drop and show you if they know what an expression is, as opposed to which one falls under the difference of squares. The assessment for this lesson is 10 multiple choice questions, and it's worth 10 points. 3.02, factor by grouping. So in this one, the students will most likely be given 4 terms, and they will have to learn how to group them together and how to factor out their greatest common factor from there. It is 5 multiple choice questions, and it is worth 10 points. 303 is the sum and difference of cubes. This first little interactive here that they get on the first page talks to them about perfect cubes as opposed to the rectangular prisms. They learn about cubes, sum and difference of cubes, factoring the sum and difference of cubes in this lesson. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 3.04 is all about quadratics. The students learn general form of quadratic equation, the parts of a parabola, average rate of change, graphing quadratic equations, and the standard form of quadratic equations. The interactive on the right-hand side allows the students to change the different constants within the quadratic equation or within that parabola, so they can see what happens when you change like the leading coefficient to a negative. It would flip it over. They can see that by using those different sliders for A, K, and H. The assessment for this lesson is 5 multiple choice questions, and it is worth 10 points. 3.06 starts off the lesson with a video for their hook, and it is dealing with completing the square. Students do touch on this a little bit in geometry, but not to the extent of this lesson. For this lesson, they learn rewriting the standard form of a quadratic equation in the general form, completing the square, and in the general form, they see if it's a minimum or a maximum. The assessment for this lesson is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 3.07 is solving quadratic equations. So it's taking what they learned in 306 and now they're actually going to solve. And when they solve, they'll find the zeros of the equation. Solve by factoring or solve using the quadratic formula. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 308, they learn about solving the equations with complex solutions, because it isn't always nice and neat. At this point, they can choose the method of which they would like to solve. Sometimes it's easier with one method than it is with another. So that's what the example shows here. Are they going to do the completing the square? Are they going to do the quadratic formula? Which method are they going to use? So it gives them that option. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 309, they do a little bit more investigating with quadratics. They actually derive a quadratic equation. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. The assessment summary, everything in this module is auto-graded. Module 4, we get into dividing and solving polynomials. It introduces students to the different theorems of algebra and how they can be used to solve higher degree polynomials. The Module 4 checklist goes from 00 to 411, from the pretest to the module exam. They learn 7 lessons, 401 through 405, and then 407 and 408. The key concepts in this one go anywhere from key features of graphs. You'll notice that has come up quite a bit in the modules because it is extremely important for the students to know the different key features of graphs. So we bring it up throughout the entire course. Division of polynomials using by a monomial and by a polynomial. Polynomial synthetic division, the factor theorem, the remainder theorem, solving polynomial equations, and all the different graphing of polynomial equations and functions. 401 is polynomial long division. They learn dividing by a monomial and dividing by a polynomial. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 402 is polynomial synthetic division, so a little bit easier way for them to do some division with polynomials. The assessment for this lesson is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 403 gets into the theorems of algebra, and there's that important note box, that pink box that students really need to know. The theorems that they learn in this lesson are the fundamental theorem of algebra, the factor theorem, and the remainder theorem. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 404, the rational root theorem and Descartes' rule of signs. In this lesson, the students do have quite a few videos showing them how to use the rational root theorem and Descartes' rule of signs just so they get the hang of it. It is a little tricky. They have 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 405 is solving polynomial equations. And in this one, the students will learn to sketch a graph, solve polynomial equations, and write polynomial equations. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 4.07, graphing polynomial functions. So now they get into the nitty-gritty, actually taking what they learned and graphing it. They graph polynomial functions without technology, graph higher degree polynomials, shifting functions, graphing polynomials with technology, solutions of polynomial equations, and key features of polynomial graphs. There's that key features again. Very important that the students learn the key features. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 408 is a collaboration opportunity. This is fully teacher graded. The students can work on their own or they can work with another student. The assessments for this module, 401 through 405 are auto-graded. 407 is also auto-graded. 406 is partially auto-graded. That is a quiz where they will combine all the information from 401 through 405. And then 408, of course, we just talked about that. That one is a collaboration opportunity. It is teacher graded. Module 5 is the last module in segment 1. And in this module, the students go over rational expressions and the application of rational equations. The Module 5 checklist, quite a bit in this module because they are dealing with the end of the segment information with the collaboration component, the segment review, and the segment 1 exam. The students learn these 8 lessons, 501 through 504, and then 506 through 509. The key concepts in this module, they solve rational equations, vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, oblique asymptotes, adding and subtracting rational expressions with like denominators, with unlike denominators. 501, simplifying rational expressions. They learn about simplifying them and the restrictions on rational expressions because of that denominator. This assessment is 10 multiple choice questions and it is 10 points total. 502, multiplying and dividing rational expressions. Those are the 2 concepts they learn in this lesson. 6 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 503, adding and subtracting rational expressions. So in this, they get into the like and unlike denominators. 5 multiple choice questions, 10 points total. Lesson 504 is simplifying complex fractions, which is the fraction over a fraction. The assessment for 504 is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 5.06 deals with discontinuities of rational expressions. And in this graph down here, it shows the circle there where this is not defined. The assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 5.07 is asymptotes of rational functions. We deal with vertical, horizontal, and oblique. The assessment is 10 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 5.08, solving rational equations. In this lesson, they learn about solving equations with fractions. 5.08 assessment is 5 multiple choice questions worth 10 points. 5.09 is application of rational equations. In this lesson, students learn work problems working against each other and other ways to represent the work. There are 5 multiple choice questions in this assessment worth 10 points. The assessment summary for this module, they're all auto-graded from 501 through 509. Now we're going to get into the assessment design. As mentioned before, there are collaboration opportunities for the students. There is a collaboration component at the end of each segment. They are allowed to collaborate on 4 different lessons, 202 and 408 in segment 1, and then 605 and 707 in segment 2, which we'll get a little bit more into when we go to that recording. The pre-test and practice tests are only worth 1 point. As you can see, they both have the same number of questions. So 1.00 and 1.07, there are 34 questions in the pre-test and 34 questions in the practice test. The entire pre-test and the entire practice test is worth 1 point. At the end of the segment, there is an extra test, extra review test, which is the segment practice test. They have more questions on them, but it's still only worth 1 point. The module quizzes, which were mentioned throughout the recording, 103 and 406, and then in segment 2, it's 604 and 1003. There are 4 multiple choice questions and 1 essay question, so it's partially teacher graded. The module test consists of 2 parts. Part 1 is auto graded, and part 2 is teacher graded. For module 1, it's a little different than the other modules. It's 14 multiple choice questions and 3 essay. And then for modules 2 through 10, it's 10 multiple choice questions with 4 essays. And those 4 essays are teacher graded. The segment exams are 3 parts. Parts 1 and 2 are both auto graded, and part 3 is teacher graded. Parts 1 and 2 are 15 multiple choice questions, and part 3 is 5 essay questions that the teacher grades. This concludes segment 1 training.